Welcome everyone to the first webinar of CT Summer Web Series. My name is Christopher Tomeo. I'll be teaching you today. This Summer Web Series is a thank you to all of the wonderful communities that have helped me with my Eagle Scout project, and for the communities that are just tuning in now to watch my first lesson. I'm glad you're here. I apologize for the delay. The stream is supposed to start at 11 o'clock, but due to errors in the encoding software, I had to delay the stream start. As of now, it is 11:11 a.m. The first lesson will be for grades 6 through 8, solving algebraic equations. And the date is 7/12/20, or July 12th, 2020. I'm going to wait a couple minutes for everyone to get their materials, and then we're going to get started with the lesson. Once again, I'm glad to be teaching everyone. If you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and I will go ahead and see them. I'll drop a welcome message in chat for everyone who comes in a little late. Again, once we hit the 2-minute mark on the live stream, I'll begin. So now that everyone has their paper and pencil, I'm going to presume that we're ready to begin. So looking at our first example problems here, balance both sides of the equation by using inverse operations to get the variable alone and find this value. So what does that actually mean? Well, what this actually means is that when we have our sample problem, for example, 2x plus 5 equals 21, we want to get the variable, our x, or the letter in this equation, alone. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides. We're going to subtract because that is the inverse operation to get our variable alone. By subtracting 5 on both sides of the equation, we get to 2x equals 16. Now, since we want to get our x alone, our variable isolated, what is the inverse operation of multiplication? Well, that's just division. So we're going to divide both sides by 2 to get x equaling 8. And to test our solution, we can actually go in and test it. We can multiply 2 by 8, because 8 is our variable, so I'm going to multiply it by 8. Oh, my bad. That's worse written 8. Then we're going to do 2 times 8 is 16. And then we do 16 plus 5 is 21, so our variable rings true. Next, we're going to look at the next problem. We're going to look at 5 plus y over 6 equals 13. Once again, we're going to subtract 5 from both sides because that's the inverse operation of adding 5. But this problem is a little bit different in the fact that this time our inverse operation is not division, but it's multiplication because it's y over 6, a division problem or a fraction. So we're going to multiply both sides by 6 to get y equaling 48. And substituting in this works as well, because if we substitute our y for 48, these are parentheses, we do 5 plus 48 over 6 is 13. Well, 48 over 6 is just 8, so we're going to do 5 plus 8 is 13, which works, so our variable rings true. Just as a quick explanation of terms, a variable is a number that we do not know. When we have the original equation, 2x plus 5 equals 21, we do not know that the variable is 8, so instead what we have to do is we have to algebraically solve for it. The number in front of the variable is a constant, and then the other numbers are other constants, such as 5 and 21 are also constants in this case. So think of it as a number that is not a variable, or a non-letter, is a constant, while a number is a variable. So going into our first problem, we're going to have x over 4 minus 3 equals 2. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to solve the equation. I'll give you guys a minute and 30 seconds to solve the equation. If you need 2 minutes, just type it in chat and I'll give you a little extra time, and then we'll go through it. So I'll come back and explain the answer to this when we hit 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Any helpful tips for solving algebraic equations? Make sure you get your variable isolated as soon as possible. You want to take the most direct and most simple route. Taking the most indirect and simple route can sometimes be a little tricky to see at first, but once you solve enough algebraic equations, it'll become really easy really fast. The key to this and most math is practice, 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 practice. The more you practice, the better you'll get at it, especially with algebra, because it's such a foundational building block you're going to need in the future. Again, 30 more seconds, and then we'll go over the problem. Remember, if you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to drop it in the chat. So now that we've hit 6 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll go through the problem. First, to isolate our variable, we're going to add 3 to both sides to get our variable alone on one side of the equal sign. 3. Isolating a variable means getting it alone, hence to isolate. So now we have x over 4 equals 5. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply our 4 by both sides to get our x alone. You get 4 over 4. We're going to get 4 over 1, my apologies. That's a 1. We'll cross cancel to get x on one side alone and isolated, and then do 5 times 4 for our times table to get 20. So now x equals 20. Now before we declare that as our final answer, what we should do is we should check it. So let's plug in x. If you guys would like a couple seconds to do the check, that's fine, you can do the check on your own, but just for convenience's sake, I will do the check with you guys. So plugging in 20 for our x, we have 20 over 4. Minus 3 equals 2. So 20 over 4 is 5, minus 3 equals 2. I say x is 20, it's right. Moving on to our next problem, 3a plus 4 is 16. I will give you 2 minutes to do that problem. So it is 8 minutes and 30 seconds on the live streaming problem, or actually I'll give you a minute 30 seconds. So once we hit 9 minutes and 45 seconds, or 10 minutes, we'll begin. Again, it's so important that you master the skill of algebraic equations because it's such a building block in the future to get to know. Thank you to all our commenters in the chat. I had a lot of fun teaching you guys. I hope you guys get a lot out of this building block exercise. So now that we've hit 9 minutes and 45 seconds, let's move on to the next problem. So looking at number 2, first we want to do the same steps as we did number 1 in the first step, but except this time we have to do the inverse operation of subtraction. Notice our minus sign here at number 3. Oh, that's a minus sign. Meaning that our inverse operation was addition. But since we have our plus sign here, our inverse operation is subtraction. So we'll subtract 4 from both sides. Minus 4. Minus 4. Let's get 3a equals 12. Alright. Now, our inverse operation this time is division, because it's 3a, 3 times a, or in other words, a plus a plus a. So divide both sides by 3. Get a equals 4. Now, before we can declare this the correct answer, we have to do our check. Now, if the answer we get does not work in the check that satisfies the original equation, then it's not the right answer, we did something wrong. But let's check our answer. We'll substitute a for 4. My bad. I'll erase that. Shaved off a little of the 3 there, but that's alright. I substitute a for 4. That gives us 12 plus 4 is 16, because 3 times 4 is 12. So therefore, I declare the answer to be correct because it satisfies the original equation. Moving on to our next problem, I'll give you guys a minute, 30 seconds to do that as well. So once I hit 13 minutes and 30 seconds on the timer, I will go over this problem. But for now, try number 3 yourselves for a minute and 30 seconds. So now that I've given you guys a minute and 30 seconds, I'm going to go ahead and solve this problem. So we have our original problem being c over 2 minus 5 equals 25. So first what we're going to do is we're going to add 5, because the original equation has subtracting 5, we're going to do the inverse operation of adding 5, add 5 to both sides. And then we're going to have c over 2 equals 30, because that's 25 plus 5. Then this time, our inverse operation is multiplication, because this is a division fraction problem, c over 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply 2 by both sides of the equation. A general rule for equation that's true every time you do an algebraic equation is what you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other side of the equation so that the equation remains equal on both sides. For example, you cannot just add 5 to one side of the equation without adding 5 to the other side of the equation. Cross multiplying, we get c equals 60. Now, does this satisfy the check? Let's do the check. Since C is 60, we know that 2 into 60, or 60 divided by 2, is 30. 30 minus 5 is 25. Therefore, the equation is 25 equals 25, giving us 60 is the correct answer. Great. Moving on to our next set of problems on the bottom row here, I will give you a minute and 30 to do the answer. So once I hit 17 minutes on the stream counter, I will go over the next problem. If you have any questions in chat, do not mention, or please mention them in the chat. Everyone has about 15 seconds left before I move on to the solution for the problem. So now I'm going to move on to the solution of the problem here. So now we have 8b minus 5 equals 29. So to tackle this problem, first we're going to have to isolate our variable, as we always do. So we'll do the inverse operation of addition. But it's subtraction. So we'll just subtract 5 from both sides to get 8b equals 24. So now we have 8b equaling 24, we will do the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division. So we'll divide both sides by 8. You have b to equal 3. Now, before we declare b equaling 3 as our correct answer, we have to do the check. Moving on to the check, we're going to do 8 times 3. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 5 is 29. So that gives us the correct answer of 29. I say b equals 3 is the correct answer here. Now that I've done a couple of problems with you here, I'm going to give you, instead of a minute and 30 seconds, I'll shave off 30 seconds out the time and just give you a minute to complete the problem. So it is 18 minutes 40 seconds on the timer, so when it hits 19 minutes and 40 seconds, I will do the next problem. So now that we've made it to 19 minutes and 40 seconds, I'll move on to the next problem here. So problem number 5. First we want to do our inverse operation of addition. So first we're going to add 11 to both sides. get 35 on one side of our equation. So you get 35 equals 5d. And because just like problem number 4, this is a inverse operation of division because it's multiplication, we're going to divide 5 by both sides. To get d equals 7. Alright, now before we can declare d equaling 7 as our correct answer, we're going to have to do the check. Since we have established that 5 times 7 is 35, 35 minus 11 turns out to give us 24 by doing math in our head. But if you want to see the actual math illustrated out, that's a bit large. $35 minus 11 is 24, giving us 24 equaling 24, so our equation rings true. Moving on to number 6, I will give you another minute to do this problem. So we will do, once the timer reaches 22 minutes and 45 seconds, I'll go over this problem. So you guys have a minute. Remember, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to put them in the chat. Okay, moving on to the next problem, we have e over 4 plus 2 equaling 5. So we'll add 2 to both sides of the equation, because that is the inverse operation. To isolate our variable. 2. To get e over 4, equaling 7. So now we're going to add, or not add, my apologies, we're going to multiply 4 by both sides of the equation. Sorry for stuttering my words. To get e equaling 38. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, before we declare our correct answer, we're going to do the check. We're going to do 24, or 28, over 4 minus 2, to see if that equals 5. Well, we know that 28 divided by 4 is 7, so we're going to do 7 minus 2, and it's that equal to 5. Our equation is true. So 28 over 4 is 7, minus 2 equals 5. Our equation is true. Therefore, e equaling 28 is our right answer. Move on to our next set of problems. We have a whole nother page of problems for us to do. So, I will give you a minute to do the next problem. So once the timer reaches 25 minutes and 30 seconds, then I will go over the next problem. So get started on the next problem, number 7. So now that we've hit 25 minutes and 30 seconds, I can move on to the next problem. Looking at this problem, we have to do our inverse operation of subtraction. So first we're going to subtract 3 from both sides of the equation. That was a bit large. You get 9f equals 18. Our next inverse operation is division, so we divide 9 by both sides. Get f get f to equal 2. Now if we do the check for the equation, make that 2 a bit clearer. We know that 9 times 2 is 18, plus 3 equals 21. So 18 plus 3 is 21. That looks good to me. I say the answer is correct. Now when the timer reaches 28 minutes, I will give the answer and solution to problem number 8. So I will give you a minute to do problem number 8. In just about a couple seconds, I'll get on the next problem. So now that we've hit 28 minutes, I'll move on to the next problem. So this problem has seemingly low numbers, but let's see how we can tackle this one. So first we're going to do our inverse operation of addition and add 2 to both sides. To get g over 3 equals 3. So we'll multiply 3 by both sides. So 3 over 1 times 3. G equals 9. Now, you know as well as I do that we have to do the check before we can just accept that g equals 9. So we'll do the check to prove it. Since we know that g equals 9 from our solving it, we'll test it. Substituting g for 9, we know that g over 3, or 9 over 3 is 3, minus 2 equals 1. So 3 minus 2 is 1, so g equals 9 as our substitution. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, we tested another number. Let's say we substituted g for 6. We have to do 6 over 3 is 2, 2 minus 2 is 0, and since 0 does not equal 1, g cannot equal 6. So, since g does not equal 6, since the test failed, g does not equal 6. That's just a little aside extra test to show that our answer is 9, and that any other number would not work in that circumstance. So once the timer goes to 30 minutes and 40 seconds, I will move on to the next problem. So go ahead and do problem number 9. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to type them in the chat. So now that we've hit 30 minutes and 40 seconds, I'll move on to the next problem. This problem has a bit bigger numbers, but that's alright, we can still tackle this one all the same. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 16 on both sides of the equation. Minus 16 here. Minus 16 here, so that's both sides of the equation. To get 6h equals 30. Now dividing both sides by 6, because that's the inverse operation here, because it's multiplication. We're going to get h to equal 5. Now we're going to just accept that h equals 5 without doing the check. Substitute h for 5. You get 6 times 5 equaling 30. 30 plus 16 is 46. So that answer rings true. H equals 5. Answer is correct. Scrolling down, I'll give you another minute to do the next problem. So once the timer reaches 33, I will go ahead and show you the answer for number 10. So now that I've given you a minute to do the problem, I'm going to move on to the next problem. So I over 5 minus 9 equals 17. Normally I is not used as a variable, but in this case, for the sake of argumentation, it's used as a variable. So first we're going to subtract 9 from both sides. I over 5 equals 17 minus 9. That would give us 8. So to multiply 5 by both sides, we get I equals 40. Now before we can just accept that answer, we have to give the check. And in this case, the check would be 40, which is I, over 5, plus 9, does that equal 17? We know that 40 over 5 is 8, plus 9 would give 17. And the equation seems to ring true by the test, so I is 40. This time I'll give you another minute to answer the next question. So once the timer reaches 35 minutes and 20 seconds, I'll reveal the answer to the next problem. You have a minute. Again, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. Put some lip balm on just in case I have to get dry while teaching. So I'd say I've given everyone a minute to 40 seconds. I want to speed it up a little bit just to see how fast we're comprehending it. But moving on to the solution for number 11, I'm going to first subtract 5 by both sides. get 8j equaling 56. Dividing by 8 would be our inverse operation here. So we get j equaling 7. But we have to do the check first. So first we'll do the check. 8 times 7, so substituting our variable, is 56. Now 56 plus 5 is 61, and since we have 61 on both sides of the equation, our answer rings true. Alright. Moving on to number 12, I will give you another minute to do that problem. So once our timer reaches 37 minutes and 30 seconds, I will go over the next problem. You have a minute. Again, any questions, don't hesitate to put them in chat. Okay, so I've given everyone roughly a minute. I'm going to move on to the next problem. So here we have 3k minus 2 equals 10. First, we're going to do the inverse operation of adding 2 to both sides. Get 3k equals 12. Next, we'll divide by 3 to get k equals 4. Now to do the check, we're going to multiply 3 by 4 to get 12 minus 2 equals 10. 12 minus 2 does equal 10. So therefore k is our correct answer. I will give another minute, so when the timer reaches 39 minutes and 30 seconds, I will go over the next problem. You have a minute. So now that I've given you another minute, I'm going to move on to the next problem. So here we're going to do the inverse operation of subtraction, which is addition. And add 2 to both sides. Get m over 4 equaling 8. Here I'll multiply 4 by both sides, because it is the inverse operation of multiplication. Get m equaling 32. Now before we can accept this answer, we're going to have to do the check. So I'll divide 32 by 4, which is 8. And does 8 minus 2 equal 6? Yes, it does. So we'll give a good check mark here. I'll just change it to make it 40, so if anyone wants to come back to it, they can go ahead and see that. Next, I will give another minute. So once the timer reaches 41 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll go over to the next problem, number 14. So now that I've given you a minute, I'm going to move on to the next problem. So here we have 3n minus 4 equals 20. So here what we'll do is we'll add 4 to both sides due to it being the inverse operation, it being addition. We'll add 4 and 4. Okay, 3n equals 24. And I'm dividing by both sides because that's the next inverse operation. 3. We'll get n to equal 8. Doing our check. We'll get 3 times 8, which is 24. 24 minus 4 equals 20. I'll rewrite the original equation up here. It's a little blurry down there. Now 3n minus 4, 3n is 24. 24 minus 4 does equal 20. So our answer of n equaling 8 is correct. I will give you another minute for our final problem, which is once the timer reaches 43 minutes and 45 seconds, I will move on to the next problem. The final problem. So moving on to our last and final problem. Here we're going to do the inverse operation of subtraction and subtract 5 from both sides of the equation to isolate our variable. To get p over 6 equals 3. Next we're going to multiply 6 by both sides. Multiply by 6, multiply by 6. To get p to be 18. Now for our final check. So you know that p is 18. We'll substitute p for 18 here in our original equation. To get 18 over 6, which is 3, and 3 plus 5 does in fact equal 8. So our equation rings true and p equals 18 here. If you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. So I'll give another minute for final questions. As there doesn't seem to be any final questions, I'd like to thank everyone for coming along. This is my first class. I'm glad that you watched. I'm glad that you learned something. This was solving basic algebraic equations for classes for grades 6 through 8. This is a very fundamental skill that you will need later on in life, especially as you move up in high school math. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching. My name is Christopher Tomeo, and I'll end the stream here. Once again, thank you everyone. I'm glad that I could serve my community.